So today we're trying to figure out how do we enter our data into SPSS. Just a quick sort of review of what you've learned in the lab. Like, some of this stuff gets lost in translation and requires practice. And so since we're entering our data for the first time, it's okay to not know everything that's going on. So first thing I just want to show you are what different data sets, well, these are data for like one participant. So what different data observations will look like depending on your experimental design. So let's just start with the easiest design. Let's say I had a completely between subjects design with two independent variables, an empathy condition and an emotion condition. So your data, like, I don't know how it's going to look, but this is how mine would look. I'd have, like, number one, I'd have participant number on my data, right? I'd have a condition code that tells me what condition of the empathy condition they were in. They were in the high empathy condition. And I'd have an emotion condition code that tells me they were in the sad condition. And then I have my dependent variable, which is actually an emotion questionnaire, which has answers to 3 questions. How happy are you right now? How sad are you right now? How peaceful are you right now? So what you should notice is that you only have one repetition. So you only have 0 repetitions of the dependent variable. So one example of the dependent variable. In this case, the dependent variable does have 3 components to it, 3 questions, right? That we're going to have to figure out how to average those together. But essentially, that's all we're going to do is average these together. Now, in my data, I'd put all this data into my SPSS. I wouldn't worry about averaging. I wouldn't do any of that. So this data right here, has only one instance of the actual dependent variable. Additionally, this data has 2 codes on it. A code for what empathy condition they were in and a code for what emotion condition they were in. So that's it. Like, between subjects data is pretty easy to identify. Now let's compare this to within subjects data. Same design, all right, but it was completely, the study's completely within subjects. So you have my participant number still, and I just threw my design on here so that we could all realize what's going on, because within subjects data is pretty complicated. So first thing you see is that, okay, my design is empathy high or low, my emotional manipulation is sad versus happy, and my DV is happiness. This is just like, I would put this on my data just to keep myself aware of what's going on, or I would replace all of this with just like one little code that would say this person was in the... Well, no, actually, I wouldn't replace it with a code. I would just have, ignore that. Let me move on. But essentially, this is here to help you. And then when I look at my data, I don't have any specific to the participant experimental codes. Like, they're in all conditions. So they're not in the empathy condition. They're not in the sad condition. They're in all the conditions. So what I have here in my data, you go back, still have my 3 questions for my dependent variable. So I have those 3 questions once for when they are in the high empathy and sad emotion condition. I have it a second time for when they're in the low empathy and the sad condition, right? New data. For that same participant, because this is just one participant's data, I have the questionnaire again repeated a 3rd time for when they're in the empathy high and emotion happy conditions. And finally, I have it for when their empathy low and emotions is happy. This person, there are 4 conditions to this 2x2 experiment. This participant participated in all 4 conditions. And so from them, I have the questionnaire answers 4 different times. If you only have like a 1 measure dependent variable, like % accuracy or something like that, it's not it's only going to be one number, not a repetition of three numbers. But this is my dependent variable. It's a questionnaire. There's 3 questions on it. So they repeat. And then, I didn't put it on here, but you can imagine a mixed design will have one code. Like, maybe let's just go ahead and do that real quick. Let's say the empathy condition was high for the participant. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go ahead and copy this and just show you what's different. I'm going to paste it in a second once I get to the bottom. And then I'm just going to go ahead and create another data set for you just to see what a mixed data set in this design would look like. So let's say my participant was only in the high empathy condition. So empathy equals high. The design is just there for us. I'm going to throw it at the top just to keep us there, right? But the design was just for us. And I know this person's in the high empathy condition. So then they would never give me this data. They would never give me this data. What I have is a participant code for one of the independent variables. And then I have two completed questionnaires for this participant. So this is what a mixed design would look like, what the data would look like. And so what you have to do is you have to look at your data and say, okay, like, how many repetitions of my dependent variable, whether it's a questionnaire or one item, did I get, right? Like, ask yourself that question. If you have none, if you only have one instance of your dependent variable, guess what? It's a between subjects design. If you have, let's say you had a 2x2 design like this, and you have 2 repeats, you know that one of your independent variables is between and the other one is within. If you have like a 2x2 design, you have 4 repetitions of your dependent variable. You know that you have a completely within subjects design. If you had a 3x3 design, how many repetitions of the dependent variable would you have per participant? You would have 9. Right? So these are what your data look like, just in raw terms. These are raw data terms. I have the design up there. For me, this is helpful. For you, this should be review by this point with the lab and things like that. But ultimately, you have low practice, so you're probably scared. But ultimately, this is just how the data works. When it's between, it's super easy. You have 2 codes, and you have 0 repetitions, right? When you have a completely within subjects design, you have no codes. I just put my design here. Let's get rid of it so it stops confusing you. You have no codes, and you have 4 repeats in this study. If you have a 3x3, you'd have 9 repeats. You'd have all the repeats you can possibly have of the dependent variable. When it's mixed, you have no code. You have 1 code and 1 set of repeats. So in this case, we had a 2x2, so our dependent variable repeats twice. If we had a 2x3, and the 2 was a between subjects independent variable, and the 3 was within, we would have 3 repetitions on the questionnaire. Okay, so you got to look at your data. You got to make sure you know what your data is before we can enter it. And I know you know the designs, but like some students mess up data collection, and it's okay. Some students think they have a between subjects design, but actually have a within subjects design, or vice versa. So make sure you're checking that out. All right, so that's your data. How would you enter in data for one participant into SPSS? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start a new SPSS data. And what I'm going to do is show you how to enter the data for first a between subjects design, then the within subjects design, and then finally the mixed design. So for between, well, let's take a step back. How does SPSS want you to enter your data? It always wants you to enter in 1 row per participant. So this row right here represents every single piece of information you have on your participant. Everything. So before I ever label my variables, I go in and I enter my data. And I know that's counterintuitive, right? Like, but for me, sometimes I have studies with 20, 30 observations, and like, look, I'm not going to preset that up. I'm going to just look at my data and go through it and see what's in there. So now we're going to go back to our Word document real quick. I'm going to make it smaller so we can see it on both screens, and I just want to enter in my data. So that's my design. So this is a completely between subjects design right here. I only have these marks. So for this participant, I know that they are participant number 1, right? That's my first piece of data. I know that they were in the empathy high condition, which I'm going to mark as 2. And then I know they were in the emotion sad condition, which I'm going to mark as 1. All right? And then I have a 5, a 1, and a 3. And I'm going to put those in. I'm not averaging those yet. Like a lot of students try to pre-average stuff when they have a computer that'll do it for them. Stop doing that. All right? But now I have all my data in for this between subject participant. That's everything, right? And so let's just make sure I now label these and give them, I label them and give them labels where needed and change types. So my participant is nominal. You could view it ordinal too if you put your participants in order that you ran them. My next number, right, which sometimes requires you to go back, it's that 2, and that 2 was my empathy condition. So don't rush your data analysis. Empathy condition, right? And my values are 1 equals low empathy, and 2 equals high empathy. I guess you could do a spell check on this. That's pretty interesting. I'm going to click OK. And I think that's great. You could give it a label if you wanted to. That made the variable shorter, but I'm not going to do that. Then I have my empathy condition sad. That was my my emotion condition sad. So I got emotion condition. That's the name of my independent variable. This one right here has values where I said 1 equals sad and 2 equals happy. So I add those in and click OK. And then right here, these are scale. These are both scale. Well, they're actually nominal variables. So they're both nominal variables. They're just telling me what condition someone is in. It's no big deal. Oftentimes, I'm not going to lie, I leave all my variables at scale, but it doesn't really matter, honestly. And then I have my happiness question number 1, my happiness question number 2, and my happiness question number 3. And those are all scales, and scales. All right. So now I go back to my data view, and I can see how I enter my data. So I have the participant ID, which I need because SPSS needs 1 row per participant. By having the participant ID, you know not to put participants 1's data anywhere else. Then I have 2 codes that tell me what conditions, each of the conditions the participant was in. They were in the high empathy condition and the sad condition. And you can see that it translates my labels to words, which I think is pretty cool, actually. And then I have my 1 questionnaire instance. If you have multiple dependent variables, maybe you have multiple questionnaires, you might have a sadness questionnaire. You then enter in all those data after here. The important part when you're entering your data into SPSS is do not do any pre-processing. You want to have a database of your entire data. And that's for bookkeeping purposes. Okay? So we have the data entered for the completely between study. Now let's enter it in for completely within. Now I'm just going to put a break here. This is going to say break for you all to realize that these would not be the same data set. This is just me highlighting how they look different on SPSS in the same file. So I need you to view this as a completely new file. Starting right here, this would be a new data set in SPSS, okay? Now that I've set it, let's see what we do here. Participant number 1, right? I'm going to enter in all my data just as it is, and I'm not going to worry about the labels, just like before. So then I have scores, and I'm just going to enter in those scores, a 5, 1, and a 3. 5, 1, 3. That's my first repeat. Well, my first peat, I guess. It's not a repeat. My first instance of my dependent variable is a 5, a 1, and a 3. My second instance is a 3, a 3, and a 3. My third instance is a 5, a 1, and a 5. And my fourth instance is also a 5, a 1, and a 5. And now you're like, oh my, that's a lot of numbers. Yes, it is. The reason it's a lot of numbers is because in a between subjects design, this person would actually represent 4 different participants. So they have 4 times the amount of data per person. And I know that that's a little difficult to get at first. I was always like, I don't know what's going on. But now I've entered in all the data I have for that participant, and then I figure out what the labels are. Well, some of them are easy, you know. Well, they're all kind of easy. Participant, right? Oh, fine. I'm just going to call it participant 2. Just actually participant B. Okay. And then I look at my data and I'm like, okay, this is my first point is my first score on the questionnaire. So I'm going to write Q1. And then I'm not done with it, SPSS. So I'm going to name it Q1. I get frustrated with SPSS. You can understand. So Q1, which is high empathy and sad emotion. So Q1 high sad is what I'm going to call it. Yes. Okay. Q1. Thank you, SPSS. Let me please type back in here. High and sad. Right? So then this is Q2, high and sad. This is Q3, high and sad. Oh, somehow I don't know why I typed G in there. That's pretty funny. Oh. Q3, high and sad. You know, who knew typing would be so hard? And that's our entire questionnaire number 1. That's our first 3 numbers. And then I'm like, okay, we got happiness questionnaire, low and sad now. So now we got Q1, low and sad. Q2, low and sad. Q3, low and sad. And now we're done with our second set of data. Our third set is high and happy. So I'm going to do the same thing a little bit faster. Q1, well, unless I make some typos. High and happy. Q2, I don't know why I keep hitting the G. That's a study for one of you all. High and happy. Q3, high and happy. Q4, high and happy. Q5, oh, did it again. That is so funny. You learn something. Oh, nope, it's not. There is no Q. Oh, I went too far. Like, see, when you're entering data, sometimes you just get ahead of yourself, and I just perfectly demonstrate that there. I'm just gonna go just Q right now, just so it stays. And SPSS is weird. It like can't handle basic stuff that most other computer programs can, which just is infuriating to this guy. Now we got our fourth one, which is empathy low, emotion happy. So Q1 low and happy. Q2. Oh, sorry. Q2 low and happy. And Q3, low and happy. So I hope that makes sense. And first, I think it's really good to look at what's going on between the different types. Remember, this is my break. This is a within subjects design. This is a between subjects design. What we notice, first thing we notice is that there are codes. There are nominal variables here. All these are scale except for this one. So I can go in and make these scale and these scale and these scale and these scale. These are all scale. I think it does kind of help sometimes when you have coding variables, but I'll just be consistent here. I'm not going to lie. This is a step I will often skip. Right? But it helps us see, like right now, it helps us see the difference. We have one nominal variable here, one nominal variable here. They're both participant. Then we have two more nominal variables in the between subjects design that are just codes. They were high empathy and sad. And here, if you look, high empathy and sad's here. Right? High empathy sad is in the specific columns. Low empathy sad, low empathy sad, low empathy sad. High empathy happy, high happy, high happy, low happy, low happy, low happy. So the codes, it's not like they don't exist, but they're part of the columns, right? That coding, like what condition they're in, high empathy and sadness, is actually in my column names. And then the final thing you'll notice is I have the same data here for the first instance, but then I have 3 repeats. I have repeats of the data. I have multiple versions of the data. So that's the difference between and within. Now let's do another break here, right? And let's enter our data one final time for the mixed design. So here, I got participant is 1. I'm just pulling my data. Their empathy condition is high. Right? And then you'll notice I have 2 repeats on the data. So I got a 5, 1, and a 3, and a 5, 1, and a 5. So I'm just going to enter those. 5, 1, 3, 5, 1, and 5. All right? And so now I want to go in and name my variables and deal with that. I'm going to call this participant 3 so it doesn't lose its mind. This right here. Oh, sorry. I was in the wrong spot. Let me go back to my data view since I clearly messed that up, right? Like I labeled it wrong, but I wanted to make sure I was in the right place. Participant. I'm just going to do that. And this is the empathy condition code. So I'm just going to do that. And this one is, now remember, they have an empathy condition code. So do I have to write high empathy? I do not. So this person is in the high empathy condition. So this is when emotion is sad and when emotion is happy. So I've simplified that for us, okay? But now what I see here is I have my numbers in there, and this is emotion sad. So we got Q1 sad, Q1 sad, or Q2 sad. Sorry for a few of the mistakes here. I know it gets frustrating. Q3 sad. It's also like complicated and it's hard to do on the fly. So give me a little bit of a break. So the second one is happy. Yes. Right. So we got sad and happy. I could have figured that out, but it's early. Q2 happy. Q3 happy. So now I'm looking at my data view. Let me just go ahead and change my types. Nominal, scale, 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 scale. And now we can look at all three. We got the breaks that happen here. I was like, oh, my data went away. So we got our breaks that tell us these are three different data sets. So data set number one is super simple. Between subjects, you have participant number. You have participant code for one condition, participant code for the other condition, one independent variable. Now this is completely between. You have a participant number, and that's it. Then you have, columns for the different condition combinations. Right? So these first three columns represent high empathy in the sad emotion, low empathy in the sad emotion, high empathy in the happy emotion manipulation, and then we got low empathy in the happy emotion manipulation, right? No codes. That we have 4 repeats. We have a 2x2 design. If we had a 3x3 design, we'd have 9 repeats here for this participant. And this is just entering one participant's data. Then if we had a mixed design is a little bit of both. We have 2 variables, but we have 1 code. We have a participant number, 1 code. And then because this is a 2x2, we only have 2 repeats, right? But once I do it for the one participant, I can do it for all the participants. But this is how you enter your data. My next video will show you how to analyze the data for each of these 3 different conditions. I'm going to add some fake data here, and I'll be back in about 10 minutes. Well, for you, it could be 2 seconds, but in the real world. All right, but that's how you enter your data.